Hello, hello everyone. Welcome back to another stream. To my extremely professional looking stream with this title bar visible here. Isn't that wonderful? Let's see if I can get my audio settings somewhat correctly set up here. We have some viewers even. Excellent, welcome everyone. It's been a little while. Hey Cactus, welcome back. So, you might see something different. I'm on Windows 11 now. And that's a little spooky with the streaming and all of that. I almost went live with wrong mic settings till I realized that I had to fiddle and tweak them a little bit. Let's hope everything is all right. Feel free, as always, to let me know if my audio is somewhat decent, and we can get started. Let's maybe pull down the music just a tad. Something like that. I think that's probably fine. So, how is everyone doing this fine evening? This is a little later than I usually do these things. Just been an absolutely crazy busy day. And in fact, absolutely crazy busy couple of weeks or so, which means that I haven't really been able to do a lot, to stream a lot, but actually not even really had any time to work on the game all that much. But such is life and all of that. Let's make sure I can actually build this thing. I can build, or I rather have it built already on the C++ side. On the engine side. How is the game looking? The game is looking pretty good as well, it would seem. So let's try to run this thing. And the game runs. Excellent. So, I have indeed been working on completely unrelated things, mostly for the past couple of weeks. I am now back working on Madrigal stuff, and will be for quite a long time actually, but I'm going on a trip in a few weeks, and so that means that I only have a few weeks left if I want to put out pre-alpha 2 sort of before the end of the summer. And as I've said for quite some time already, that is something that I would like to do. Let's see if I can actually manage that. That's been my goal, to put out pre-alpha 2 before I leave for my summer holidays, essentially. During which I will probably do some work, but not really any streaming, because I won't really be at home necessarily. At least not for long enough to actually have time to stream. And so I kind of have to think a little bit about what I want to get into pre-alpha 2. One of the things that I've been wanting to put in for a very long time is an options menu. And this is essentially the only thing that I've been working on Traction Point during the past few weeks. And so we finally have an options menu here, like this. Not all of these things actually have anything sensible in them. For example, these game options. Just put like a text language or something, whatever I'm gonna put here. I think text language is probably gonna come here into these game options. Video options have some more sensible things. All of these are things that we will actually be able to adjust, at least later on. These actually don't do anything yet, so we can press apply here. We can even control this with the mouse. We can click apply, and the only thing that happens is that we get this to-do output text there in the debug output window. So it doesn't work yet, but I was thinking we could maybe do something today. Audio doesn't have anything in it. I was kind of thinking I would, rather than having this is a new control, a new UI control called the spin box, which I added to my UI system to be able to do this. So it basically just allows you to toggle between a fixed set of different values. And for the audio, I think I'm gonna want to have sliders, but we could of course always start with like a spin box set up there as well, and just have it sort of go from like 0% to 100%, and then just jump by like 10 or whatever. But I was thinking maybe we would implement the control options today, because I basically need to write the code to be able to sort of quickly read the controls as the game code is running. So for something like the camera y-axis, whether it's normal or inverted, for example, the gameplay code will just straight up read this value from like an options module or something like that. And so we need to add that, because it is not there. Just because we have this UI here, right? The UI is just essentially like presenting some data, but we need the data to actually be there and be stored and loaded and you know, saved to disk and all of that. But I was thinking maybe we would do something like this today. Try to get these two things implemented, and that could be a pretty cool thing to do in a stream. Well, that's sort of like it's a self-contained enough thing, and I think we might be able to like get it done in like an hour or two or so. How does that sound? And yeah, we have some credits, a section for credits here, but it's grayed out, so kind of just leaving a space for it there. And yeah, like UI is, especially when you're doing everything yourself, like building the UI system and everything, these things actually take quite a lot of time. So just like getting this thing to work, first of all, figuring out how I want this thing to actually look, because you can navigate this with the gamepad. All of this works. So you know, you go up and down and you essentially switch what you are, what you're selecting, and then to the left and right you switch the values, figuring out how the kind of layout should work, and then implementing all of this. It's taken almost like full 2 weeks of nights that I've had, even though it sounds kind of slow. That's how it is. UI isn't terribly simple to do if you're not too used to doing that. So let's have a look. If we look at this control options thing here, we have a control options menu UI view. Or yes, we do have that, but we have a UI view model. So the UI view is actually passed to this system here as a parameter. The UI view, like essentially all my views, is created using a script. And so here we have the control options menu view. Here on the right, and we can see that we are essentially like constructing the whole thing here. We have the background, which is this darker area here. We have the control options label, which is split into like part 1 and part 2, so control and options on separate sort of IDs. So that's that part. That's the background. I don't think we don't need those anymore. I'll take them away. And we can actually auto update or hot update this thing. Then we have an array of options. So here we'll most likely have more control options in the future. Currently I just have 2. But here we can have, like, if we want to, we could do something like this. I don't know. Test widget, and have it be called test. And then we just set that to false. Now we have a new one here. We don't actually have any values for it because that will come from the code, whatever you're actually filling that thing with. But this is the kind of stuff that I've been working on, making sure that I can actually sort of create these things kind of nicely. Then we have the spin box stack. So these are spin boxes. We have a stack of them. It's actually a widget stack, but I just call it spin box stack here. And then we have the apply and back buttons, which are these 2. And then I wonder if that works. Yeah, that actually works as well. Yeah, you can sort of highlight the sort of boundaries of these things, and it shows you what is what. So that's all nice. That's pretty neat. I don't think we need to necessarily do like a whole lot on the view side. I think most of this should be fine. We just need to essentially like hook up these 2 things on the Zig side. So we have two items that we're interested in here. We have invert Y mouse, invert Y gamepad. So these are essentially widget names. Then we have an options menu item type here. We have an array of them, and we create them, push them to the list, and then we add the list here to this spinbox stack. And the spinbox stack quite simply just goes through the list in a for loop and adds the spinbox to the view. And yeah, if we're at the index, which is I've set as the default one, which is essentially number 0, so index 0. The first one here, we just set it to default focus. And then it goes and creates the vertical stack, which is this thing that just kind of aligns them and makes sure that you can sort of if you have many of them, you can sort of navigate neatly and nicely between them with just a keyboard and all of that. That's all fine. Add spinbox quite simply just uses the view to create a spinbox, sets some stuff on it, and this name here, which is this invert Y mouse and invert Y gamepad. If we know the name of a widget on a view, you can then, from the code, you can go in and get a reference to this guy, which is how I have filled it with the normal and inverted elements. So if we go to the Zig side of things, we can see here, I have a comment here actually even, that the values names must match the widget names in the view. So we have just quite simply an enum, and these just match those names. And then with those spin boxes, when we set up the view, we basically go and convert those into strings with tag name. So we get all the values and convert them into strings, and then we use view get and assert widget of type spinbox with the name, and we store them here in this G spinboxes, which is an array which contains pointers, so UI spinbox pointer. And then with those, you can later on, so right here, I quite simply just set normal and inverted. Oh, and I actually don't do localized. Yeah, we should probably do that as well. I think I have localized strings for those already set up and ready to go. Let's make sure that is the case. So, if we go to Excel, we have text UI normal, which is normal, and inverted, which is inverted. I don't speak any any of these languages, but I do speak Swedish, so I've just done like a half-assed Swedish translation to make sure that the system actually works. So normal is just normal in Swedish. Inverted would be inverterad. So that's like something that we can check that it actually changes if we change the language. So text UI normal and text UI inverted. So we should just be able to essentially do this. I need to shut the game down here, of course. Or not of course, I should say, perhaps unfortunately. But add item, and we need to do text UI normal, and we set this to true this time around, and then inverted like so, and that should be good. Oh, we need to set that to 1 probably. This value can be essentially whatever you want it to be. It's not necessarily like an index or anything. It just needs to be unique within the spin box. So that's why I have the user of the spin box essentially give it here explicitly, so that like if you have a list and then later on you need to remove something from the list, you can have holes within your sort of sequence of things there that might solve some issues later on. Hey Jake, welcome to the stream. All right, so let's see if we get that inverted text there, or localized inverted text there now. So we got the options and controls, right? We have inverted and inverted. So if I switch this to Svenska, yep, now this changes. This of course doesn't change because it's just a hard-coded English string there from the code. So I'm gonna take those and just copy them there as well. Something like that. But this is essentially where the story ends as far as this control options menu is concerned. We can see that if we have a button that is clicked, the back button sets the sub menu to none, so we essentially go back to the main options menu. Apply changes just prints to do apply changes. So this is where we could actually then store them, save those values and store them somehow. So that is where we essentially need to, well, first of all we need to read those things from somewhere, so that we can initialize it with whatever the state is, and then when we apply it we need to store that back into the thing. Hey Radu, welcome to the stream. I watch your stream as a podcast and ADHD fuel. I'm inspired by you. Currently make my own LLVM language. Oh, that's impressive. Yeah, you're quite welcome to use my streams in any, or consume the stream in any way you want. Alrighty then. So, what else do we have here? I think the rest of the stuff that we have is mostly boilerplate. You know, when this view model is activated, we just push the view onto the stack. So you can have multiple views on top of each other. I think here we have basically two. We have one which is this background video, sits on its own view, and then we essentially pop the current menu from the stack and push another one onto it. But we could in theory have like multiple on top of each other. So that's what that is. Then I have an update there which doesn't really do anything currently. Oh, I printed some stuff there for testing. Setup view is run essentially every time the view is recreated. So that includes whenever we change the script as the game is running. Actually, we can see it right here. View was reloaded. This is actually what gets called, and if it is a success, then we set up the view. Right, because you can break the thing quite easily. You just put like an S letter there, and now the game would go error building script Here you can see the view is there on in the background still, doing its best to show the video, but the control options view died. And now if we remove that S and save it, now we get it back. So that's pretty nice. And then we have on Goofy event. This is perhaps not the most common way of reacting to button presses in Goofy. Typically I do something with like Goofy actions. So you can register a Goofy action. It's literally just a string, and then you can fire that action from various places in the UI and then react to them in other places. But I kind of got annoyed with like having a large number of buttons here. Didn't want to register an action for each and every one of them. So this is another way that you can do it. You register a Goofy event handler here with the manager, and then we just listen to the button clicked. Yep, what is that actually? That's something that we don't use apparently. I do use it somewhere though, don't I? Options menu. Okay, yeah. Okay, I use it here in the main one, but I don't use it in the sub menus. So let's actually comment those out in all of the sub menus until we actually need it. I could just remove it, but I'm just gonna do it like that for now. And yeah, then we have that one. You're the first non-Romanian that pronounced my name wrong. Yeah, maybe it's the Finnish pronunciation of things. I pronounce almost everything else wrong. What did you prefer, Rust over Zig? You probably meant the other way around. I'm making my own engine. What renderer should I use? Diligent. I want to make it work for Linux and AMD as well. Okay, many questions. I saw your WebGPU and NVRHI videos. Yeah, the WebGPU video is pretty old at this point. And it doesn't necessarily reflect my current views all that well. And so it kind of pains me a little bit that it's my most viewed video. Although the NVRHI video was kind of made in a hurry. Hey Matt, welcome back. Yeah, I mean, Diligent is probably fine, as I mentioned in the NVRHI video. I personally really like NVRHI, and so I kind of recommend that. SDL3 might be another thing to look at. I wouldn't necessarily use SDL3 unless you are sort of starting a new project. Let's see if we can find the thing. So here's on the SDL wiki. This is another one that you can look at, and this wraps the major ones behind a common API. This is a bit more opinionated on what you need to bind and where, and because of that, it would have been like a huge amount of work for me to, or I'm assuming it would have been a huge amount of work for me to actually massage my renderer to fit on top of this, while NVRHI doesn't really care, for better or worse. So it was in air quotes an easy thing to port to NVRHI. Of course, these things aren't really renderers, they're just APIs or abstraction layers for APIs. So if you want like a full renderer, then I'm probably not really your guy. I don't really know what to recommend. I mean, what I've used most recently probably is like Ogre. I think the website even died, didn't it? Oh, it's back up. excellent. I don't want this thing to die, even though I don't really use it, but it's almost like nostalgic to me these days whenever I see that ogre is used for something. This is a full renderer, if you want a full renderer, but it's kind of old and it's pretty large, but I hear some of the newer versions are pretty neat, so yeah. As for why I went with Zig over Rust, I don't really know Rust. I haven't done like a whole lot of Rust. Rust doesn't really look like a language that I would enjoy writing. I come from a C++ backend and I wanted something which was vastly simpler. And Rust doesn't look like a language that is vastly simpler. While Zig is very much simpler than C++. That's sort of the short version of it. Every now and then someone asks me this question and I probably give a slightly different answer every time, but it basically comes down to the fact that like I don't really know Rust. I'm sure it can be a good language if you want to go that way. Okay guys, so how do we want to actually save and load these options? Well, it just so happens that I already have a system for that. And it's probably one of the oldest systems in the whole engine. It's kind of crappy in a way, or in some ways. It's essentially like a key value storage, and it's called config options. And I've recently actually bound this to Zig. I didn't used to have it previously. And I don't really like this API, but it's used by the engine itself, so I just figured, I'm not gonna spend any time on this, let's just get it done. Doesn't necessarily need to be very beautiful, it just needs to work. So basically what you can do with this is, you can add strings, floats, integers and booleans with names into the config options, and values, obviously. You can get them back out. You can set them, so there's like an add and a set separately, and they kind of assert if you try to do it incorrectly. And there's a has. So this is not a very good API, like I said, but it is what it is. And you can save them. That's basically it. The engine handles the loading for you. It in fact also handles saving in certain cases. And then there are 2 points here in Zig where we probably want to actually use this. Blah 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 blah. Let's see. So if we go to game, actually means app. So here is a new sort of hook into the engine. So set default config options. You get a pointer to one of these guys. You can see that it's not really used yet, and in fact you don't need to have this here. If you just take it away, it will work. But this gets called, as of earlier today when I hooked this up, this gets called when the game determines that you don't actually have a config file. So if we go into app data and I remove the config CFG, it currently looks like this. Oh, here's some crap that I tried earlier. But basically we have a render window mode, we have a resolution, width and height. These three are required by the engine currently. Player name is something that I think the trampoline layer adds, because some placeholder UI views expect that to be like a player name. We don't really need to care about that. Some value is something that I added today. If we just like delete that guy, and then we put a breakpoint here, and we run this again, we should hit this. And so this is where we can add new things with their default values for this particular game, so that we get a nicely sort of set up state when you launch the game for the first time, for example. And now that I ran it and I closed it down, now if I put a breakpoint there, you see we don't actually hit it anymore because we now have the file there, so we don't need to call this. So this is where we will want to actually set up the default values, and then later on you can get the config options if you need it for something through the app, right? App, and here, get config options. Yeah, you can see this is not an actual true Zig pointer. It's just a wrapper for a pointer, so PTR, and that just wraps the C++ object under the hood, so that we can use it from Zig. All right. So, what I was thinking we would do is, I would add here probably to... Hey, Nolram. Welcome back. It's been a while. Where should we put this thing? Maybe an app. Maybe app is a good place for it. I'm gonna call it options.zig. And in here, I'll probably just take like those two. And we're gonna lay out some probably some enums and some functions and then some data. My config options are just a giant struct to get serialized to JSON at exit. That is kind of what this does as well. But it sits sort of behind an interface that I can use from both C++ and Zig, and that's why there's a little bit of complexity there. I'm calling in from the depths of skin animation trenches. Hey, how's that going? I saw you. I think it was on the GP Discord that you had some things working there, or maybe broken. I don't remember which one. But some of that. Anyway, let's consider this for a bit. We have where did it go? I lost it. I lost the thing. I'm in the wrong project. Here we go. Game options. So we need to have no, not game options. Control options. We need to have a value for a normal value, like an axis. What do you call this? What is this? What is like the noun for this? It's like an axis mode, right? It can be either normal or inverted, something like that. And we want to probably like match that to 0 and 1 to the values of that enum. So let's start with that, and let's go to app again. Did I actually I added it in the wrong freaking project here? Oh boy, one of those days. So options.zig should go here. Thank you very much. And here we want to have standard. I'm just going to import them, write them out. So standard Zig stuff. Then we probably want to have basis. And then we probably also want to have... Actually, we don't necessarily need any means stuff. Let's see if we do. We might do that. Anyway, there's a section here for the enums. So what do we call that? That was like axis mode or something like that, right? Axis mode would be an enum. Let's make it an U32, or backed by U32. And we have normal and we have inverted, right? And normal would be 0. Inverted would be 1. I think it probably figures out. If you just give it 0 as the first one, I think it figures out the rest. But let's be explicit here. So if we do that, we need to somehow import this so that we can actually use it. So let's do probably like, yeah, here looks good. Maybe like right after this. So bobconst options, import app options, like so. So now we should be able to go to control. I'm gonna collapse like almost all of these options, right, like that. So we can go here and we can do, yeah, we have means there. So means.options. You know, means.options.axis mode. We can shorten that a little bit and just call it axis mode. And we can also do something else. What is that one? It wants it as an I32. Okay. Right, that's an I32, not a U32. So let's maybe have it as an I32 then. And here we can add like a function that makes this a little easier to use. So let's do pub as int, and it takes like the self axis mode, right, as an I32. Isn't this basically how it works? Then it's supposed to be a function, right? I have these in a few places. Let's just see how it works. Yeah, so there's self flags, and then you just do int from return int from enum, like that. So rather than having to type this whole thing, if I know I'm going to be using these as integers in many places, I typically do it like that, because then I can just do axis mode normal as int. And inverted as int, like that, right? So now we're like binding this localized string here to like a value that we can use even in the gameplay code. Okay, let's see. I have skinning working and basic animations playing now. We just need to figure out blending. Matrix multiplication order really makes things fun here. Matrix multiplication order makes things fun everywhere. And it's one of those things that you kind of just like have to try. You have to sort of understand enough of the math that you can see when something is right and something is wrong. I mean, sometimes it's obvious when something is right or wrong, but yeah, it can be interesting. One of the things I almost miss outside of C# is the region directive for defining code regions. So useful. Yeah. I don't know. I don't really like it, to be honest. I understand many people like it because like it's sometimes used in like third-party code all over the place, and if I'm sort of vendoring like a third-party, you know, C# control or library or something, usually the first thing I do is I go through and just remove those regions. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. I'm not a big fan of like code folding in general. But hey, you do you. Glad to hear you're progressing with your skeletal animation. That's something that I don't really have currently. I mean, I have a somewhat working OS animation integration, but that's about it. Okay, let's keep going. So now we have a value here, or a type, to store this one thing. And actually I32 is probably good, because I think if we go to config options, yeah, integer is actually also an I32, so it makes perfect sense in that sense. I suppose that the advantage of making a game with only vehicles. yeah, I mean, one could say that one could say that I don't have skeletal animations because I'm making a vehicular game, right? And because I'm making a vehicular game, I don't really need skeletal animations. And thus, you know, I just haven't had the time or I haven't had the motivation to actually make that happen, right? That's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is that I'm making a vehicular game because I don't have skeletal animations, so I can't make a character-driven game. You're free to look at it any way you want. However, with vehicles like this, where you know you have the gripper arm could very well be animated or somehow sort of represented with like a skeletal animation. Essentially what we have here is like bones attached to other bones, and then you are, you know, driving those bones according to some input or physics, and that makes other things react, right? So I mean, I could have done this with skeletal animation, with like an existing skeletal animation system just fine. It would have worked well enough. The way I currently do it is that I guess I essentially have like an animated hierarchy sort of thing going. But yeah, there's no like skinning to this. This is still like rigid sort of pieces, articulated pieces of the vehicle moving around. Right. Is the claw a different mesh? It is, yeah. Yes, it is. Let's see. So let's hope this works now. I haven't broken anything. So the gripper truck is made up of a whole bunch, or essentially every vehicle is made up of a whole bunch of components. And here we have the claw, the gripper arm, as I call it. You can see here that it's made up of just like a whole bunch of pieces, and these white boxes here essentially represent the physics bodies, and then we drive them all together. So yeah, we have the dynamic body transform. Here's a mesh. Here's the chassis mesh. We have the bed mesh. We have the left hatch, the right hatch. You know, like these two guys. What do we have? We have the interior, right? Because otherwise you would just be able to see through it if you didn't have anything. It's very much sort of like not actually like decorated, the insides of that, but just have it there so that it blocks the sunlight and all of that. And then we probably have like we have the windshield. Oh, jumps a little bit. Windshield. We have the actuator. We have the other actuator. So that's like this thing that like is fastened to the bed. We have the actual truck bed. We have the gripper arm. We have the gripper arm fingers left and gripper arm fingers right. And that's not a mesh. And that's not a mesh. So how many is that? That's like, I don't know, 10 different meshes or something. And of course, this vehicle is not finished yet. We still have the wheels, and we actually don't have any suspension visualizations yet for this guy. So if we're driving around, this thing is essentially just like hovering on top of those wheels. I have a component that does that if you just tell it which mesh pieces to render and where it will render the suspension for you. That is how the Scout renders its suspension. But yeah, there's probably like, when everything's said and done, there's probably like 20 different meshes or something making up this thing. Also, if you lift up the bed and open the hatches, and like all of the moving pieces are like their own mesh essentially. Things like that. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, let's see. I have some more questions. Can't recommend to stick to vehicles. I will for the foreseeable future. I kind of think I would probably benefit from, like, I've been thinking like about animating trees and things like that. That could be kind of neat. I only do like a little bit of vertex animation for the leaves currently. And what is my preferred 3D format? I don't really have a preferred format necessarily. I use FBX just because that is kind of what I've used for a long time. GLTF is probably fine, yeah. I don't know. I don't like any of them. They're all crap. They all give me headaches when I have to do something with, like, debug them somehow. Okay, let's keep going. So in the options, we want to have a, I mean, there's gonna be more here, right? More types there. We're gonna want to have a function that we can call to set up the defaults. So set defaults, and actually probably let's do this. Let's do basis dot config options pointer, right? This guy. That guy gives us the access to essentially like the file system, and also allows us to set some of those options that we will need to do that actually affects like the engine, such as like changing the graphics API, things like that. Config options. That's just a void. And then this thing will get called when from here. Means.options.set defaults, and then we just pass that through, right? We don't really need that self there, but yeah, it is currently set to self because it's kind of like sitting on this means app. Just gonna let it be for now. And then when the game starts, I've done this here already. When the game starts, so on app startup, once we've set up most of this stuff, this could actually probably be done like as one of the very first things. Actually, I think this is probably a better place for it. So here we need to essentially take the options that have been loaded from disk, or if you don't have it on disk, they've been set to defaults, but we need to sort of populate this options module with them, right? So what do we call this now? Let's do it's essentially sort of like pulling them from the config options. I guess what we can essentially call them, or call this function, is like load from disk, right? Like so. And then we will also have, actually maybe we want to store this. Yeah, I think we want to store that. So let's call this something like pub function init and load. And again, we get a config options pointer as an argument. And this time we will actually store that in... that's actually, it can be a const. The const here essentially refers to the pointer, not to the value that it points to, but it's like a pointer, which is const. And we can do like g config options. It's initialized to null, but here we actually just set it to whatever we get from that, right? And then we want to load. So here is what we want to load from disk, like so. And then we need another function, which is like when we have actually modified the values to our liking, we need to write them to disk. And we do that by pushing them to the config options object via this g config options pointer, and then we call save on this guy. And that will make them saved. And what do we call that then? Probably just save to disk, I guess. And it doesn't need any arguments, any parameters. This needs to be called here, save, and here is like push to config options. And so what I'm thinking is that we will have, as part of this module, just freely available, like a variable for each of these options. Because this config options is essentially like an API on top of a hash map. And so if we read one of these options, essentially like every tick or every frame, we don't want to go getting them from a hash map. That's going to be slow. So we're just going to be reading them from these variables here, and then occasionally sort of syncing them between the hash maps and the actual variables. And so it's a little bit complicated, but this is, again, like with many things here, comes from the fact that we're sitting on top of a C++ code base here, which is already using this system, and I kind of just want to fit this on top of it and then move on to the next thing. So, these two guys, invert Y mouse, invert Y gamepad. Maybe we should have like separate sections here for the different sub-menus of those, right? So the first one is game options, and it's just to do. And then we have, what was the next one? Let's see. I don't remember the order anymore, but let's try to keep the same just to make it. So it's game, video, audio, and control. At least for the time being. Something like this. So we would have game, video, audio, and control. And so control options is where we will have then two of these axis modes. So invert mouse Y, or actually invert, what is it called? Is it camera Y? It's just invert Y. So invert Y mouse, and that is an axis mode. And initialize it to normal. And then we'll have the same thing for the gamepad. So now that we have this, we can have the gameplay code actually just read it straight from this variable, right? Yeah, I think that makes sense. And so we need essentially like a key into the hash map for each of these things that we want to do. And I'm wondering if we should actually just have them. Should we have them here next to these guys? Or where should we put those keys? Those keys will be used in all of these functions. So we should probably have constant for each of them. If that makes sense. Or then we quite simply just use this, like a stringified version of this. I need to probably think about where I want that to how I want that to work. But for the time being, let's just go with a stringified version. I'm gonna see or have a think about what the best way to avoid duplication here would be. Yeah, I don't know exactly. Anyway, this will be an integer, and the name would be something like that, right? And we will have int from enum, and it will be invert y mouse, right? So we're reading it straight out of this guy. That means that the default value is essentially what we set here. All right, this, I don't know if this will work for every single one, but this for these enums and other sort of relatively simple values, that will work just fine. Right? Is there like a stringification thing in Zig? So we do Zig stringify symbol, stringify complex struct. Yeah, I don't want like a serialization. I just want like the equivalent of like the hashtag in the C preprocessor. I don't think there is anything like that in Zig. We might be able to do that somehow though with some built-in. I was thinking there would be like a name off or something, offset off, size off. Yeah, if anyone can think of that, let me know. That way we could take like this guy and stringify their name into this. What would be the best way to do that in Zig? I'm sure there's probably like multiple ways to do that. But that would be nice. Of course, this name doesn't really matter. That could be 0 and that could be 1, as long as we use the same for all of them. But anyway, let's keep going. So this sets up the thing. Init and load is where we will want to get that out. So we do invert y mouse is config options, get integer, invert y mouse. But of course this won't work because we need to do enum from int, and then just wrap that whole thing inside of it. Like so. That is how we get it back. I think we should probably start using that G one. The G is there mostly to as a sort of hint to myself that this is like, in air quotes, global data. It's not really global in the sense that you can instantiate this module several times, but I kind of think about them as global data. Also kind of tells me that oh, this is like a variable, not just a type. And here we have essentially the same as that. We have set, right? That would be that one instead. Isn't that kind of how it works? If this is how it works, then what we could do is essentially have it sort of have it specified as a parameter, whether we are adding or we are setting those values. And then we could use the same code in both of those, if that makes sense. And we can of course do that. We can just go in here and change whatever the hell we want. Yeah, this can be made a lot more elegant. But anyway, this is essentially what we want to do. So let's not get bogged down by that right now. It's an implementation detail. Basically, what we have here now should be everything we need to have these control options saved and loaded, right? So first of all, now if we again delete that config file like so, and then we see if we can actually build this thing. So now if I run this and just basically shut it down almost immediately, oh, something's happening. What? Oh, stupid me, I blocked the output there. Like so. So now if we take a look at this, we can see that, okay, we have invert Y gamepad, we have invert Y mouse, in addition to those other ones, so that works. That's cool. And now we should be able to hook that into this guy. So when we do the setup view, we need to do set selected value based on that. Yes, excellent. So we do actually, maybe I don't need to do anything like that. I'll just do set selected value, and then we do means options what? Oh, those aren't public. They need to be made public. Options is right there. So pub var and pub. There we go. So invert Y mouse as int. That's it. That's everything we need to do. Same thing here, except it is of course gamepad, like that. And then here in apply changes, we do essentially the same thing as here. We get the invert mouse and invert gamepad. Just gonna copy those guys there. Broop, broop, broop. All of that stuff, and then we do means.options.invert mouse is we probably need to do enum from int sb.getSelectedValue. So that's how we're converting back to the enum there. And then finally just means options.save to disk. Right? How about that? So they should both be normal, both 0. And now if we run this, turning off the music again, control. So they're normal. Let's invert the mouse and apply. And we crash immediately. Unhandled exception. Read access violation. Well, how about that? Set integer. Let's see what is happening. Right, interrupt name is looking pretty good. I think that's all probably fine. Set int property. Property name is invert mouse and value is 1. So the values are completely fine. This thing here looks a little strange. That's probably not good. What is CPP pointer is 0? Oh, well that would explain it. Why are you being 0? Oh, it's because it's a... Yeah, that needs to be a variable, doesn't it? Does it not? Yeah, I do wonder actually how we are able to do this since it was a constant. But that would explain why it didn't work. So invert mouse and press apply. Okay, we got the same thing again. Huh. That's a little funky. Let's do options. So save to disk. We can do like basis print f. CPP pointer value is what? It should be... Oh, that won't work. This will work. It should be non-zero there. If it's 0, then we're doing something stupid here on the Zig side. Probably just to apply immediately. And we can see what's going on. Yeah, it's 0. What? What? What is it here then? Original CPP pointer. I mean, I guess it might be 0 there as well. Because... Actually, we've been using it here, so yeah, that should be fine. Oh. I know what it is. Why don't you guys shout at me in the chat for being stupid? We're not calling that guy. Functions only do things if they're called, you know. So here we need to do means dot options dot init and load and pass the config options to it. How about that? how about actually doing it? So now, ladies and gentlemen, the mouse is inverted, the gamepad is normal. Apply. We should probably have some sort of feedback here. Well, there's an audio feedback when you click that button, but maybe something more than that. Of course, if you have audio on, tend to shut it off. So now let's see. Control options. Hey, it's inverted. And now we can see that invert Y mouse is 1. And if we invert the other one, click apply, now they're both 1. Neat. So the thing that still remains to be done is to actually read these values in the gameplay code, right? Whenever I put out a version of this, either to you or to one of my friends, someone always asks me how do I invert my mouse or my gamepad or whatever. And I don't play inverted. I used to play inverted back in the day, and I converted from inverted to normal with gamepad specifically. So I don't really suffer from not having that anymore, but I know some people do. So let's make life easier for them, shall we? So then, how do we apply that thing? That is a whole different question. I don't think we can. I don't think we can read that from. I guess as part of. I don't think we can integrate it into the input system currently. So we probably have to quite simply negate it in the camera code for the time being. Later on, it might be kind of cool if you could just flip a switch somewhere and it would do it for us, but it doesn't do that currently. So where do I actually want to go? I don't even know anymore. Gameplay. Is it gameplay maybe? Campaign manager, blah 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 blah. Controllers? Animated camera controller. Yeah, that's probably not it. Client player controller might be. So this is probably has, yeah, okay, vehicle camera controller and animated camera controller. And free camera controller. So it's probably like the free camera one and the vehicle camera one. We want to invert it in these two guys. So where's that actually? Oh, it actually comes from basis. And I think the vehicle one might actually come from the vehicle helper library. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that means that we actually need to give it as a sort of a parameter here, because this guy can't read our options because it's in a different library. So we need to be a bit smart about this, don't we? We already have a boolean here which specifies whether or not we're using gamepad, and I think this is updated basically like every tick. We're getting like, okay, what's the input mode? Is it gamepad or is it not? If it's not gamepad, that would mean that it is mouse, because I think those mouse, keyboard, or gamepad. So we can use that to sort of read the correct option there. What do we actually use that for? Right, okay, bye-bye. Let's see. Orbit camera. Apply the rotations. It's a vertical. vertical rotation. Orbit mode vertical delta with acceleration. Is this actually the thick orbit camera? Orbit mode vertical delta. Yeah, this is probably just called from the client player controller. It's been ages since I worked with this, that's why I'm a little, well, not confused, but I need to remind myself how this actually works. Where do we tick that guy? Right here. Okay. Yes. Vehicle orbit camera V. So this thing, if we are inverted, we want to invert that value. Okay. So then the question is here at this point, we can actually invert it here even before it goes into the vehicle camera controller. But of course we don't know here if we're using gamepad or not. So maybe it would be nicer to do it in here right after this using gamepad. Alright? So it would be something like self using gamepad and means.options. I don't have means here, do I? No, I don't actually. Of course I don't. Of course I don't have it. Yeah, okay. For the reason I just said, because this is in VHL again. So it doesn't have the options. So we need to essentially have those booleans here as members if we want to do it inside of this. That's probably fine. So let's do invert Y mouse, invert Y gamepad. And I'm just keeping them as booleans here for simplicity. Right, so if self using gamepad and self invert gamepad, then this guy, orbit mode, no, vertical delta, that guy. This one is, can I do that? I probably can. And then the same for the mouse. Something like that. And that should work, that should build. Of course, it's not used yet. Can't assign to constant, of course. Yeah. Parameters in Zig are constant. So that's not good. Orbit mode vertical delta. Yeah. Okay. Vertical delta. And we can use like a block for this, right? Actually, let's do it like this instead. Let's do const invert y is, you know, these two, or those two. And And then we can do if invert y, that would be minus that, else simply itself. Alright. And then we just pass that on. How about that? Alright, that builds. Yeah, let's see if I can play with inverted. So options, let's see. Let's invert gamepad, apply back. And then we just go here to one of these test levels. So probably like truck bed work, something. Yep, it is inverted all right. Is it actually? So if I move this forward, it goes sort of towards the ground. Is that how it's been? It's silly, but I don't know now. So if I move it forward, it moves towards the ground. Okay, let's go change that. To normal, apply, apply and back. And then load the same thing again. Truck bed work. So now if I move it forward, yeah, it doesn't actually change. It hasn't changed. Ah. What? What? Oh, of course. It's kind of like slightly similar to what we had previously. In that you have to actually assign values for them to do something. It seems that I have a problem remembering that. So vehicle camera controller init is right there. Yeah, we can probably just assign it here, right? Can you have the same name for an argument here as we have as a field? If we can, then we can just do this. And same thing with mouse. Right, and then we can do right, it's right there. So means dot options dot invert y mouse means options invert y gamepad. It's getting a little long, that list. Let's break it up. Radu says, I'm back. Well, welcome back. Welcome back. Right, except, okay, yeah. This needs to be equals inverted. And equals inverted. Yeah, because we're using booleans now. Right, so now if we go into, let's go straight here to the truck bed work. And now if I go to, if I push this forward, it goes towards the ground. This is how it was supposed to be. And now let's invert the gamepad once again. Now we can go back. back to that level. Truck bed work. So now let's see if I push it forward. It goes upwards. Hey! Yeah, now my brain is just completely confused with this. Like I have no idea actually how to do this. Yep, this is working because this just feels so absolutely wrong. I think it's like every developer who works on... Ouch. I'm getting stuck there. Every developer who works on this inverted thing goes through this same situation where they're like, yep, now this works because it kind of my brain can't deal with this thing. Right, but this is still how it is supposed to be. Yes. Now if we do the same thing with the mouse, and we invert that as well, apply, back, and load that. And now the mouse is it's chaos. Yes, okay, good. Let's see, do you work full-time on this, or are you just insanely good at writing code? I do not work full-time on this. I'm also not insanely good at writing code. I do, however, work at a games company. So I do sort of, well, I don't really do, I do tech work there. I don't do game design, at least not currently. But I do work in the industry. But no, I don't work full time on this. And in fact, I started this stream by saying that I've not really had time to work on this game for like the past 2 weeks, other than a little bit on that options menu. Okay. Hey, this works. Pretty nice. So now we have this menu actually doing things. I'm kind of thinking I might want to have this apply button, you know, do something when you click it. Now it just does it's like little squiggly sound when you click it, and of course it does save it to the disk and everything. But maybe there should be like this feels slightly underwhelming when essentially nothing happens. Maybe that is how other games do it as well. The video options, if you apply, like if you change from D3D11 to 12, for example, and click apply here, of course nothing happens currently, but it needs to show you like with a full-blown pop-up that hey, you need to actually restart the game to apply these things. And I think it actually probably only applies to this graphics API thing. But with this thing you actually need to restart the game. So that would be sort of more in your face. Text language. This could like potentially already work. Like I have, as you can see, we can change these on the fly. Only Swedish actually has anything. Except this language is, this text language thing here is not really localized. We can go back here and it's all in Swedish. So that kind of works, I guess. I do wonder how is this language thing actually done? Is that a C++ thing, or is that a Zig thing? If it's a Zig thing, we could of course, for shits and giggles, we could just actually make this work as well. Right. I don't know if I have this this like accented C from the Francais there in my font, but maybe I do. Let's see. I'm gonna go get a glass of water. I've been yapping for so long that my throat is getting kind of dry. I'll be back in just a second. Alrighty then. So let's see, where is that language thing? I'm kind of inclined to think that it is here in C++, but I might be wrong. Right, set selected language. Localization. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so we have essentially just a list of languages. I think that's just the main list. And then we just expose that through imgui. Okay, well, that of course makes it a little more tricky because we can't really do this thing. Well, we can if we jump through hoops. We can do that thing from Zig, but it's not like immediately available to us. Might be able to make it though. There's probably some stuff here that I have exposed to Zig. Yes, so you can get localized string, and we can check is valid localization string. All of these things are exposed to Zig. I wonder, do these languages have like some sort of short code? Yeah, it's like ENFRITDEES and I think those are sort of like, those are kind of official in a sense, right? There's like a standard for those, isn't there? We do language 2-letter codes. List of ISO 639 language codes. Yeah. English is EN. What is this? Set number 1. (639-1) language code. I was thinking if we just make a new function and expose that function to Zig, and that function would just take like one of these codes as a parameter, and then we would somehow match them with these guys. UI language. Yeah, we would need to somehow make a like an enum or something here. In fact, that's even better, isn't it? If we make an enum here, and then we add the ones that we are interested in from here. Like SV is Swedish, yeah. In fact, it doesn't need to be these ISO. If we make it an enum, we can just use the full names. Yeah. But the point stands, if we actually add like an enum, then we can just use that as a sort of a way to let the system know, hey, we want to switch to this particular language. Another way that we could do it is just by index. If we know that we will be loading a specific set of languages, such as here, we just know that, okay, index 0 is English, index 1 is French, and so on. That might also work. But it may be a little less flexible. I think we probably have localization Zig thing here as well. Yes. So here's where we could have the same enum. I think I'm kind of liking that quite a lot. Maybe we'll do that still today. That should be a pretty simple thing to do. Not a super simple thing to do, but a pretty simple thing to do. We can get that working today still. Then we can actually have some sensible things there in the game options menu. How about that? So let's just go. Let's just go with that. So we have this set of languages, which I don't necessarily know if this is going to be sort of the final list that we will have, but for the time being, let's just use it. And so we do, is it enum class or class enum? I never remember. Enum class, maybe? Language. I want to call that language code. In fact, do these things actually have like a numeric thing? Nah, they don't seem to do that. Some numerical stuff here in the set number 3. That would of course be kind of interesting if we could use like the official one, but okay, let's not really care about that right now. Call it just language code or language ID. Probably class enum, isn't it? Is it class enum or enum class? I can never remember that. It's clearly enum class. Okay. Enum class language ID. So English would be number 1 with a value of 0. And I think we want to, again, we want to be very explicit here with all of these. So French, I'm not typing français here, I'm typing French, so let's keep it in English. Italian is number 2, German is number 3, Spanish is number 4, and then Swedish is number 5, right? Something like that. And then this guy has an actual ID, language ID. We give it here as the second one, I think, like so. Language ID, yeah, and that's a const method. Language ID is ID, like so. It's all right. This is not the most perhaps flexible way of doing this. Maybe in the future we will actually load these from like data, so which sort of which languages we can find translations for example, we will just load them from there. But for the time being, we have this fixed set of languages here, and here we just need to do. Actually, it's UI language dot language ID dot or colon rather English, like so. French, Italian, German, and Spanish, and Swedish. Let's add a comment here to like keep in sync with Zig, so that we have these same things on the Zig side. And we need to keep them in sync with C++. What did I do? I copied just one of those. Okay. So pub const language ID is, maybe we should add this as like an int 32. Just int. Here, isn't it? Isn't that how you do it? Yes, it is. Is enum of i32, and those are its values. Right, so now we speak a common language, pun semi-intended, between these two programming languages. What? All right. Yeah, this is another project probably. Yeah, let's slide. Where's UI language? Is that in Goofy? It's in Goofy actually. Oh. Well, then these things shouldn't be here. They should be in Goofy as well. So UI, we can just put them in. Probably in the main one, isn't there a main one? There's a main one here. Yes. Yeah. Goofy is of course my UI framework that I use for essentially all my games. And so it is also used by this other game. That's why that other game is now complaining that I don't specify that language code there. Running out of screen space here. So Italiano, Deutsch, Espanol, and finally Svenska. There we go. So that should now build. Something more. What? Oh. The third game is also complaining about this. It's kind of stupid. This was just a small little prototype that I did some years ago. This was actually my first sort of proper foray into using Zig with this engine. A small little bullet hell top-down shooter called Hyper, and it is definitely not localized into anything, but it still wants those IDs there. Okay, so now we should build. There we go. And now we can go here and we can yoink those out of the way. I'm just gonna undo everything here. Yeah, back to what it was, and then move this here. Keep in sync with C++, right? Something like that. Yeah, that's good. I'm pretty sure we need to keep all of these synced with C++, but this one might not be so obvious, so let's keep that there. So language ID, cool. Now we can go to Trampoline, and we can see that we are actually not exposing like a whole lot from Trampoline to Zig, essentially just the localization. Trampoline is sort of like my launcher for Zig-based games using this engine. You can make a game in C++ if you will, or if you want, without using the Trampoline, because the engine is C++, and so you can just do everything in C++, not care about Zig, not bother with Zig at all, if you want to. But if you want to write it in Zig, then you can use the Trampoline as a sort of a launcher, kind of like the Unity launcher is for Unity games. Where, of course, in Unity you're running them in C# on top of a C++ engine. And here we're writing a game in Zig on top of a C++ engine, so the Trampoline is kind of like kicks off the whole thing. So set UI language, and this will be just an int language ID, like so. And then we need to reveal that so we can run a batch file. The batch file will run, no errors, no warnings. That's great. Right, I do wonder if I need to actually let's see what happens actually. Move that off to the side. Come on, move to the side, thank you. So we can see here that, okay, we got, oh right, that's something from before. That's not what we actually want to look at now. What we want to look at now is probably that one. So what was generated for us is a function pointer, and we bind the localization, so we get one new parameter here which sets the function pointer, although that looks good. What about here? This is the actual function pointer, just given a nicer name to work width. That actually also looks good. Okay, so let's see if that actually gives us what we want. So we can take this one line here and we go to trampoline Zig interop. And quite simply copy it here. You can see we actually even get an error here currently because we're not providing that function with it or for it. So there we go. So now when we call localization set UI language in Zig, it will call this guy on C++ side. Then we need to actually do something with it. We don't know what this is yet on the C++ side. So let's figure that out in a second. But before we do that, I'm going to have a look here. How do I actually do it? I think I called just directly onto the trampoline stuff from the localization, don't I? Yeah, that is what I do. It's a little nasty maybe to do it like this, but oh well. Oh well, who cares? So, localization, set UI language. And here we will want to use that code thing that we used, don't we? Actually, no, we don't. We want to use the just ID is an I32 still. And then we want to do it like this. I'm not bothering with the was and stuff here. No one should be changing the language from a mod anyway. And then we can do trampoline, bindings, function pointer, and set UI language just to ID like this. And that's fine. And then from localization itself, from here, this is where we can make a nicer function for ourselves to kind of work with. So here's what we'll do: pub fn set UI language, and we do ID, and then we use the goofy. We don't have goofy here. Let's bring it in. So const, put it before that one. Goofy import goofy.language ID and void. And the only thing we need to do here is do trampoline bindings API set language ID int from enum ID. So this thing we can now call from the game with our nice goofy language ID. We convert it to an integer. And we call this binding layer here. I have everything go through a binding layer these days, and this is like a compile time constant, so this thing will essentially sort of be compiled away unless you are actually building the game in as a WebAssembly module. We're left with just this localization set UI language. This thing is actually the function pointer, and it will be hooked up to the C method or function rather that we specified here. So now we need to do something with this. So how do we do that? Well, let's maybe go and have a look here and create a similar function for ourselves here. So let's do static void set UI. So maybe those two kind of belong together. Set language, UI language, goofy UI language ID. There we go. Language ID, or just quite simply ID. And this should probably be named something should be named something slightly different. Set your language by ID maybe, or something like that. Because we already have one here. And that's probably fine. And then we do this. And let's see. So what is what? Oh, that's just okay. Can't forward declare that because we need this language ID thing to exist. Okay. I think that should fix it. That's probably fine. Right, and then in here, we don't want to do that, but we want to do if. I'm confused. Right, okay, it's like that. So let's do if language get ID equals ID, then we call set selected language lang, and then return. Right. I think that should be pretty good. And then we can do localization, set language by ID, but we probably need to convert it or like explicitly cast it here to language ID. And it's called language ID. Come on. There we go. Right, so now we have the whole sort of path from sort of easily callable Zig function down to here, set selected language. And that then triggers a whole bunch of like on language changed, which is eventually reaches Zig again with the new language. And that should be all we need, essentially. So let's go back to Zig, and we should be able to do the rest of the things here. So there was a little bit of binding boilerplate for you, which is perhaps not the most riveting content. Or I don't know, maybe it is. So here, of course, we don't need like an actual type for it because we kind of have it, right? We have it here in Goofy. Trampoline Goofy here. It's an I32 again, which is good. Kind of didn't think about it, but it is what we want here if we want to store it as an integer. So now, of course, one thing to consider here is like, what is this actually changing? So currently, if we change the language here, what it actually changes is like the text language. And I'm planning and hoping to have some voice acting in this game. It's probably not gonna affect that. So it's essentially the text language, right? Text language is what we are actually changing here. So text language is in fact correct here. Text language, not or something. It is text language that we actually want to change. So then the question is like, okay, should we localize these languages? We probably should. That is probably a good idea. So they would go here before this graphics menu. Then, so that would be like text, UI, text, language. And what would that be in Swedish? I don't know. Let's use text språk. I don't know if that flows very well, but maybe it doesn't need to do that. So that would be text UI English. Engelska. And Swedish. Whoa. Svenska. You guys are getting some Swedish lessons here for free. I'm not necessarily planning on even releasing this Swedish translation here, but maybe just for shits and giggles. I could also do a Finnish one. But I don't unfortunately know any of these other languages, so I can't entertain you with my poor French skills, for example. Okay. I think those are the only ones that we realistically need for this. So again, we need to run a batch file, which goes in and converts those into a format that the game can read. So we're gonna run that one. And we can see here. All right. So it found some languages. 74 rows and one sound. The sound is like if we actually want to localize the sounds. I just have a test one there. It's not really used for anything. But most importantly, no errors, no warnings. That's good. Now we can open it up again. These Excel files are kind of annoying in the sense that like you can't even run that thing if they're loaded because it kind of blocks the file. It locks the file. So that would be that. Okay, and now if we go into let's see here, the game options, right? So we need to make that true, so the text is localized, and we need to take that one and pass it here, and that should be everything we need here. So again, now if we go into the game, oh, you know what? First of all, let's not go into the level straight away because we'll be hanging out in the menu mostly. But we need to build this for that text to actually be available there. So options, game options, text language. Now if we change the text language from here to Swedish, you get the updated thing there. So that's neat. Okay. So final thing today, in today's stream, is to be able to switch the language here from this spin box. That shouldn't be terribly difficult. So let's see how we do that. Maybe we could start by adding it here. So that would be in game options, pub var text language Goofy, which we don't have. So let's import Goofy. Goofy dot no spell it correctly. Goofy dot language ID, and it's defaulted to English, like so. And then we basically need to do this thing again. And that would be set. Yeah, there's a little bit of annoying sort of repetition here in this. I need to think about how I want to actually make these sort of less error prone. It's a little annoying to have to do all of that. But then using these are kind of easy, so that's at least nice. Rightio. Cool. So there are two places that we need to actually set the language now. The first one is probably actually here in init and load. Well, that is one place where we could do it. Or we could do it in means.app right after we've called init and load. So right after here. Maybe we'll do it here, and I'll actually add a function here to what is the nicest thing to do this? Because we have essentially like two types of options here. We have the kinds that we can just read, we can just pull all the time, like these invert mouse and keypad values. Whenever we need to know if it is inverted or not, we just read this guy. And then we have things like the text language, which is not pulled. It's actually whenever this changes, we set it on the UI system, right? We just tell it, hey, it changed now. And so I think I'll actually do it like this. A function here which is not public and which is called what do we call it? Apply options. Just void. Like this, and we call this after we have done the init and also after we have saved to disk. All right, so here we can go. Here is where we apply the options that won't get pulled periodically, something like that. Right, and then we do means.localization. No, we don't have means here. We need means. Means.zig and localization and set UI language text language. All right. Something like that. I think that should be good. And now, of course, we've made some changes here, so we'll probably want to get rid of our configuration file again to make sure we run this set defaults, which adds that integer there. And that should be good. So now we're essentially like, now we are applying that language. Now if we run the game, it should still be in English, right? And it is. But if we look at language ID and we set it to number 5, text language to 5, save it, and then we start the game, it should be in Swedish. And it is. Hey! Avsluta. So the option is there and is being used. That's neat. Now we just need to hook it up to that menu of ours. So let's go here, we go to game. And we do basically the same thing we did to that other one. The other one being the control menu. So we have text language here. Yes, we're getting one of those spin boxes. And we're doing essentially the same thing we do here. So I can just copy paste that guy over that guy and call it text language. Text language, like so. And here we can now, we have a bunch of languages, but we only really support English and Swedish currently until one of you guys contribute like a fan translation. So language ID, English, and then we need to get the localized version of that, which is that. Swedish. Goofy language ID. Swedish. In fact, I think... yeah. We can even get it... here we have it English and Swedish. It even creates like an item for us here that we can use if we want to. But it doesn't matter. We can use it like we have. So that would be that. So we get the spin box, we add English and Swedish, and we don't have an as int here. And maybe I don't want to add that because that kind of goes into the goofy side and blah blah blah. But we can do int from enum and wrap it in that. Swedish. Like so. That should be that. That should be good. And then apply changes once again. So basically, copy like those two maybe. So invert Y gamepad. This would be instead text language. Text language is enum from int selected value. Yeah, that's it. It's kind of neat. I'm liking a lot of this stuff. Right, yeah. Same thing here. I'm liking a lot of this stuff. It's kind of clear how to add new things, at least to me. I haven't really used this whole options menu system that I've been working on for a couple of weeks on and off before today's stream, so I'm liking what I'm seeing now finally. Anyway, with a little bit of luck we should be done. So let's start the game, and it should be in Swedish. And if we go into here, we can switch between the two, and if we switch to English and then click there, which means apply, you can see that it changes. How cool is that? Could of course just make it switch immediately when you do this, but maybe not. Maybe that's not such a good idea. Everything is Swedish. Audio doesn't have anything, and the focus actually is not even on anything. Well, now it is because we made it Oh yeah, that's a bit silly. Yeah. Click tillämpa, which means apply in Swedish, and then the language changes. So at least here it is like kind of obvious that okay, something changed when you click that button. If nothing else. Coolio. I think that pretty much does it for today's stream, folks. At least I don't have anything planned. I mean, anything more planned for today. But this should give me, well, almost everything I need now to do the rest of the options menu. I will eventually want to have like a slider control for the audio levels. But maybe I can do like a first version using those spin boxes. I think that will be good enough for now. And then there's a little bit of work still on the video options, because those things kind of integrate kind of tightly with the engine itself. Like I don't even know if I support switching resolution while in full screen mode currently. And I know for a fact that I don't support borderless window, but I will want to have that, so I added that there to the spin box. So some of these things are still kind of like a little bit up in the air, but I'm thinking I will probably solve them quite easily, most of them at least. Oh, look at that. What is the assert? State should be main menu. I'm pretty sure it was actually. But maybe that member wasn't updated. That's interesting. Let's see if we can reproduce that. So I went into the level. And then I came back. And then I went into here. And then I went back and back. And into a level. Okay, well, there's a bug there, clearly. Now I need to fix. But well, yeah, not sure exactly what that was about. Like I think actually, see if we go like back and forth between these a little bit. Switch language, switch back, video, audio. Use the mouse for that one. Control back. Now if we go to level, yeah, it doesn't seem to work. Okay. Well, somehow you're able to go into a little bit of a state desync there. So it does work. Jake says I'm back. Well, welcome back. Probably won't keep streaming for very long today, though. I kind of got done what I wanted to do. Except it looks like I have some sort of state desync bug there, but that's not really related to today's code. And I'm not really sure. Actually, did I do this? So I might actually just have gone and loaded a level while I was in the options menu. I think that's probably what happened. Right. And that's probably something that we can actually fix. I don't think you should be going into any menu unless you are in the main menu. Let's fix that still. because that should all be on the Zig side. So there's my call stack down there. Menu group exited. It deactivates the menu UI view model, and the menu UI view model, I guess technically we might be able to deactivate it from here, but it's kind of like there might be some other cleanup that needs to be done. So I think this assert here is actually kind of good that it's there. Let's see, levels, right? That's a thing. Yes, it is right here. Draw debug menu items. Yep. Client main menu state. Okay. Yeah. So essentially what that means is that, like, we have this debug menu here, we have a levels menu. This thing should only be visible here if we are in the main menu. If we click options here, it should go away, because this is not where we want to actually load. We get this assert if we do. So how should we do that? The easiest way is probably to do this. If means dot menu UI view model set state. Get state is what I would kind of need here, right? Yeah. Yeah, I don't necessarily want to expose this thing, because no one should be setting it directly. I guess we can always just expose it like this. Yeah, menu UI state, return G state. It's a little funny looking, that function there, but so if that state is not main menu, then return. That would be one way to do it. And it kind of makes sense that I have bugs like this, because, like, again, I haven't really had any options menu previously, so there has not been these kinds of bugs before. So levels, we click here, levels goes away. No levels, and then it comes back when we go here. Yeah, it's probably safer this way. Coolio. Yes, that about does it for today, I think, good folk. This was a little bit of a slow stream, but that's fine. It wasn't the most engaging game dev sort of what do we call it? Wasn't the most engaging game dev content, making an options menu. But I hope you enjoyed it still. So my plan for the upcoming few days and weeks is basically as follows. I will go away over midsummer, which is like on Friday, here in Finland at least. Show how that kind of translates to other regions. But I will be back working on this basically on Monday. And so don't expect any streams before that, because we will be celebrating Midsummer Eve here. And then after that I have about 2 weeks or so to wrap up work on Pre-Alpha 2. And I think I'm gonna probably release it kind of, unless I run into some like completely catastrophic issues, I am going to release it regardless of the shape it's in. And currently it kind of looks like there probably won't be modding support in Pre-Alpha 2. Because it kind of requires a little bit more sort of support than your average game release does. So I kind of want to have enough time to help you guys out if you want to try to mod the game when I release that. And so what I'm thinking is that Pre-Alpha 3 will release at the end of summer, so probably like maybe at the end of August or maybe early September, so pretty soon after Pre-Alpha 2, and it will come with mod support, and I'm also hoping to actually distribute it over Steam rather than through Discord. And so that's kind of my plan. And there will be some other things as well, but like modding support in Steam is probably going to take up some time, because I want to make a nice looking Steam page and all of that. So that's gonna take some time to put together. But Pre-Alpha 2 will arrive before that, and it will feature a new vehicle, the gripper truck. It will feature this level in an unfinished state. The new vehicle, NVRHI based, and just like a whole heap of gameplay improvements and fixes, and things like the options menu and that sort of thing. So we are making progress. It can feel a little slow sometimes. I think it will all be worth it in the end. But that about does it for today, folks. So if you want to play the game, you can do it today by joining the Discord. You can find a link there. And in a few weeks you will be able to play a new version, a new build of the game. And I will hopefully be back streaming in less than a week. But like I said, there will be a little bit of a break here for Midsummer Eve celebrations and all of that. So I hope to see you in upcoming streams. Be sure to like, subscribe, do all of the usual YouTube jazz, and I hope to see you next time. Have a good one. Take care.